How about that first reading? We heard Anne and Mary proclaim.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Gruesome?
Yeah.
Who among us can imagine watching people we love killed, tortured? Anyway, in the first verse of the Litany of the Saints that we sang, we invite Mother Maccabee to pray with us. Now we'll have a sense of her story. For context, the expression Maccabees refers both to the heroic Judean family who led a rebellion against the Seleucid Empire in the 2nd century before the Common Era, as well as the books of the Bible that chronicle the revolt. The king of Syria, Antiochus Epiphanes, right? Think about that. Quite an ego. Adopted the name Epiphanes because it means God manifest. He desecrated the Jerusalem temple, erected a statue of the Greek god Zeus, whom he identified with himself, king of the gods, right on the altar, sacrificed a pig on it, looted the temple treasury of silver and gold, outlawed observance of Jewish holidays, forbade Jewish worship, and left troops behind to enforce his decrees and carry out a reign of terror in Jerusalem. A guy you want to meet, right? Known to be arrogant, vain, and eccentric, he threw extravagant parties and held massive military parades. But enough about him. Okay. In the account we heard, nameless Mother Maccabee and her 7 sons sacrificed their lives in the name of religious freedom. Hard to imagine people we love being inhumanely tortured to death before dying ourselves. So is it just me, or is anyone curious about Mother Maccabee's name? Anyway, these are the things I do during the weeks when you don't see me. So I did a little bit of research, and I consulted a feminist lectionary, Woman Witness, by Miriam Therese Winter. And what I learned is, although the mother is not named in the Second Book of Maccabees, which we read from today, in Syriac Christian accounts, she is referred to as Shimon or Miriam. In Eastern Orthodox circles, she's referred to as Solomonia. In rabbinic accounts, she's referred to as Miriam. And in the Jewish tradition, she is known as Hannah. So pick a name if you want to give Mother Maccabee one. Accounts also differ about the way she died. Notice the last sentence of the reading. After the 7 sons died, she died. Perhaps, so here's what different sources say. Perhaps Mother Maccabee threw herself into the fire. Perhaps she jumped off a roof or fell dead on the corpses of her children. Dramatic in any scenario. An example of courage and resistance in the face of oppression. This heroic woman who lived almost 2,200 years ago typifies the Jewish mother of the Holocaust. She witnesses the courage of women under fire. So when we hear Mother Maccabee, let's call to mind the root of the word courage, which is cor, C-O-R, the Latin word for heart. Courage originally meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. The poet Rosemary Wahola Tromer, in an excerpt from her poem Because, suggests even when we are overwhelmed, the invitation is clear. Let our hearts listen now to a snippet of her poetry. One willing heart can't stop a war. One willing heart can't feed all the hungry. And sometimes, daunted by a task too big, I tell myself, what's the use of trying? But today, the invitation is clear. To be ridiculously courageous in love. To love as if it matters, as if the world depends on it. And what does that look like? Being ridiculously courageous in love? I suspect something radically different for each of us. I want to conclude today by sharing two examples of heroes who illustrate, to me anyway, being ridiculously courageous in love. I've shared before that from 1971 to 1973, my junior and senior years of high school, our family lived in Hinsdale, Illinois, a suburb about 20 miles west of Chicago. Hinsdale is 7 miles from the Broadview Detention Center in Broadview, Illinois. That's where 2,000 people showed up for an outdoor mass on November 11th to support detained migrants. A 91-year-old Mercy sister, Joanne Persh, who started a weekly prayer service at Broadview more than 10 years ago, was among the delegation gathered in prayer. And despite having facilitated weekly prayer services for more than a decade, since this past June, access to the detention center has been denied. The request to bring the Eucharist to those being detained was refused yet again on November 1st, as it had been a few weeks before on October 11th, despite complying with the Department of Homeland Security's policy of requesting access more than a week in advance. We can't forget that Jesus entered the world as a brown-skinned refugee. Our second example comes from Glasgow, not Scotland, but Kentucky, and highlights an elementary science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, we call it STEAM, teacher by the name of Mr. Scott Johnson, who, while supporting 800 students, used his free time to design and network with his peers worldwide and develop a lightweight prosthetic hand for one of his 4th grade students, Jackson Farmer, who was born with only one hand. The prototype, made of corn-based bioplastic, a couple of screws, fishing line, and small rubber bands, materials valued at less than $30, took 25 hours to print at the school's 3D printing lab and 4 hours to assemble. The result, 9-year-old Jackson is now delighted to be able to pick up a baseball or a bottle with his prosthetic right hand. The stories are different. The question I leave you with today, my friends, is how might we follow our hearts and be ridiculously courageous in love.